Norman Scheuer. I'm reporting from our new New York bureau. Well, I guess my Christmas present came early this year when Senator Al Franken resigned from the U.S. Senate. Last night, I was dining in a Manhattan restaurant when I was literally accosted by Joan Walsh of The Nation, a sometimes liberal talking head on MSNBC. She said, "Well, I guess you're congratulating," referring to the resignation of Franken. I said, "I merely reported it." She said, "No, I think you had a lot to do with it. Your time in the barrel will come," to which I responded, "Don't count on it." What is it about these mirthless liberals who have no tolerance? I merely reported the entire matter of Al Franken's sexual assault of Miss Tweeden. But then Tom Arnold went on Twitter to promulgate fake news. The washed-up former actor claims that I teamed up with John Phillips, the conservative commentator for KABC in Los Angeles, to coach Miss Tweeden on her claim of sexual harassment by Al Franken. No, I have never met, communicated, or spoken to Miss Tweeden. Just because John Phillips has had me on his program a number of times, and because I have a high regard for him, does not mean that he is the source of this story. In fact, the source is high up in the Fox News organization in New York. We merely publish and bring forward tomorrow's news today here at INFOWARS. Oh, and in the meantime, the stench of the Mueller investigation and the fact that it is hopelessly partisan and compromised continues to unfold for the American people. An extraordinary piece in big league politics tells us that an FBI whistleblower has come forward to say that Robert Mueller, while FBI director, consistently perjured himself before the Senate Intelligence Committee regarding the scope and breadth of the FBI's probably illegal surveillance program. Between that and the revelations regarding Agent Strzok and the endless conflicts of those who are like a pack of dogs nipping at the president's heels, I think their scam is becoming more and more apparent to the American people.
Well, not only that, you had the Washington Post publish a story, I think it was this morning or perhaps last night, kind of breaking down, I forget what the headline was, but whether intentionally, kind of like with sleight of hand or unintentionally, they plugged in a huge nugget into that story, which I hadn't heard of, but I think it may have been well known. You may have known this, but Andrew Weissman, who's also behind a lot of this anti-Trump Russian collusion probe and is responsible for these no-knock raids on Manafort and Flynn, Weissman was actually deep involved with the Hillary Clinton campaign, enough to even be at her dinner the night of the election.
Look, this is a partisan deep state takedown of our president. This is a highly partisan, completely unbalanced probe. It's an abuse of power. Why do we even have a special prosecutor? Special prosecutors are appointed when there is a large and obvious egregious crime, but the Justice Department has some kind of conflict. In this case, Mr. Mueller is looking for a crime, but as far as Donald Trump is concerned, has been unable to find one. So now he will seek to construct one. The only people on the face of the planet who don't seem to understand this are the president's attorneys. For reasons that are hard to fathom, they have pursued a strategy of turning over hundreds of thousands of documents without the assertion of the executive privilege to the special prosecutor, thus relying on Robert Mueller's impartiality and fairness. This is a naive strategy, in my opinion, that underestimates the enmity of the two-party duopoly that violently opposed the Trump candidacy and now simply seek to negate the results of the last election.
Well, and it's exposed the FBI as kind of a rogue regime of its own, with its own operating apparatus that just decides its own power structure, and they just assume that they can just go after anyone for anything, and as long as they think that there might be something they can find, and it's perfectly okay, and then if they catch you lying, then you get arrested. But more people are becoming aware of that. Roger, there's two stories that are developing that I wanted to get your opinion on. We got about 3 minutes left in this segment. Do you want to get into Papadopoulos first or Dina Powell?
Either one is fine with me. The fact that Dina Powell, a deep stater whose previous service was in the Bush White House, is even in the Trump White House in a position of responsibility is mind-blowing. The president ran for president as a non-interventionist, yet Miss Powell is a hard-liner. So no great surprise, Dina Powell got her job in the Trump White House on the recommendation of Mika Brzezinski. Yes, you heard it right. Joe Scarborough's partner, now placing people in the Trump White House in the early days of the transition.
Well, I can actually make sense of this because Joe, him and crazy Mika, Psycho Joe hang out at, Mar-a-Lago with Trump. So they're kind of around him. They have a semblance of a friendship, if you will. So maybe Mika makes a suggestion. But I think that they kind of knew the whole time. Roger, what I think happened here, and there seems to be some conflicting information coming out about this. I think that whatever the case of Tillerson may or may not end up being, Trump or someone within the administration used that intel and then filtered it through Dina Powell to find out if she was a leaker or not. So we already knew she was a leaker, but I think that somehow that they gave her a little information to see where that would go, and then once it started spreading around, they realized, okay, this is the leaker, Dina Powell. Now she's been ID'd, so she's just going to go ahead and try to walk away under her own power as if she wasn't involved in any sort of strange anti-Trump activities.
Well, let's be very clear. Dina Powell is the deputy to H.R. McMaster. Last week, we learned that H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor, longtime associate of George Soros and formerly working at a think tank financed by Soros, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation, had ordered the surveillance of White House aide Steve Bannon, as well as several of the Trump children. Let me get this straight. A White House official ordering surveillance on another White House official, spying, essentially political espionage. And of course, this was in the lead up to the successful effort to get Steve Bannon fired. Bannon is a patriot, and I fully support his effort to purge the Republican Party of the rhinos. But the stunning abuse of power by H.R. McMaster, the same General McMaster who we first revealed here on InfoWars, had bad-mouthed his boss, the president, in a drunken tirade during dinner with Safra Katz of Oracle. You're at the War Room. This is the right place. You get tomorrow's news today, and I'll be right back with my colleague, Owen Schroyer. Welcome back to the War Room with your hosts. I'm Roger Stone, and I'm here with Owen Schroyer. We're broadcasting from our new New York bureau. If you like the expanded coverage now affordable at InfoWars, I urge you to go now to the InfoWars.com store and support us. We are completely and totally listener and viewer financed. We have no right-wing fat cats standing in the wings writing big checks to finance our incredibly exciting expansion. We're now broadcasting 10 hours a day with more to come. Alex Jones has mapped up a rapid expansion. And right now, by going to the INFOWARS.com store, you can do your Christmas shopping and help the fight for freedom. Extraordinary sales today. Super Male Vitality. The price is slashed. Biome Defense, 50, slashed. Survival Shield, the price, once again, slashed. Deep discounts. The Real Red Pill, my all-time favorite, Brain Force Plus, plus a huge cross-section of First Amendment-oriented T-shirts and books that make phenomenal Christmas gifts for the members of your family who believe in the fight for freedom. So, folks, help yourself to these terrific gifts, but help us by going to the INFOWARS.com store now so we can continue to bring you tomorrow's news today. And now back to the War Room. So, Owen, you had another item there, another story you wanted to discuss.
So this is kind of the biggest news or the latest to come out, anything Papadopoulos, since his admitting to lying to the FBI. And it's his Italian fiance does an interview with ABC News. And this is kind of the first light shed on Papadopoulos as far as his thinking is concerned with this investigation. We already kind of know where Flynn stands with this, beyond just the fact that you know, we can be in touch with these people. But Papadopoulos' fiance basically comes on and says, look, he loves his country, he's a patriot, and he's cooperating with this investigation and everything. But basically, it sounds to me like I don't think Papadopoulos really, I mean, he gets brought on because of his expertise apparently in oil markets and trends and stuff like that, and he gets to volunteer to sit in on a couple of these meetings. And so they kind of make this big deal out of him, but really, he was just a guy who was along for the ride, got a minute in the sun, and then got caught up in this investigation in a process crime of lying. But this is another nothing burger, Roger. I mean, it's just incredible how they're trying to prop these things up with Flynn and Papadopoulos as anything. It's another nothing.
Well, let's put the entire Papadopoulos thing in perspective. I'm a veteran of 10 national presidential campaigns. It is common in a presidential campaign to form these large issue advisory groups that are largely honorific. It is meant to show that the candidate has support in the intellectual community. Papadopoulos was a volunteer on one such advisory panel. He was never compensated by the Trump campaign. He had no authority in the Trump campaign. He was a volunteer. During the time that Corey Lewandowski was the president's campaign manager, he inundated campaign officials with the repeated suggestion that he could set up meetings with high-level Russians. Nobody took him up on it. When Paul Manafort became the campaign chairman, Papadopoulos also emailed him with the same suggestion. Manafort, according to my sources, forwarded that email to his deputy, Rick Gates, and in an email, which Mr. Mueller has in his possession, said, "This is a terrible idea. Who is this guy? Turn him off and disband this committee immediately." P.S. The committee never met again. So the idea of calling Papadopoulos a Trump foreign policy advisor is grandiose and trumped up, to say the least. And Manafort, at least, never took him up on the crazy idea of Trump campaign officials meeting with high-level Russians. All that has happened here is Papadopoulos is being used by Robert Mueller as a pawn in his effort to leverage Paul Manafort in some way to bring down the president.
So it's just amazing.
There you have it. For all we know, Papadopoulos was wearing a wire for Mueller. When they caught these emails, which, by the way, Papadopoulos' emails were turned over to Mueller by White House lawyer Ty Cobb, a perfect example of why the strategy of full disclosure and waiving executive privilege is deeply flawed. Coming up here on the War Room, we have Tyler Nixon, California attorney, longtime libertarian activist, who is going to help me when we interview Jordan Sather of Destroy the Illusion. That's his page on YouTube. Jordan is an impressive critic of the deep state and their advanced manipulation of the internet to not only stifle the real news that we produce here at INFOWARS, but to promulgate fake news. Jordan Sather coming up in a future segment. So where we are now, I believe, Owen, is the president has to come to his senses soon and recognize the extraordinary danger that the Mueller probe poses to him. It is time for the president to order Jeff Sessions to appoint a special counsel, a special prosecutor in the matter of Uranium One. The Justice Department is an extension of the executive branch. Donald Trump has the authority to give that order. If Jeff Sessions cannot carry out that order, he must resign. We need to get the Uranium One scandal, which involves Comey, Mueller, McCabe, and Rosenstein, under a microscope. The very men that are tormenting our president today are up to their knees in the biggest treasonous scandal in U.S. history.
And that is why they are trying so much to deflect it and aim it at Trump and go after the Flynns and the Papadopouloses for anything they possibly can, try to get them to wear a wire, flip on Trump, everything. And it's not working, Roger. And, you know, I see the Dina Powell story, and it just is another sign to me. The rats are abandoning ship. The ship is sinking. The deep state ship is sinking. Roger Stone is going to have more on the other side. You're not going to want to go anywhere. Jordan Sather joins us. This is The War Room, Infowars.com/show, InfoWarsStore.com for your support.
Welcome back to The War Room. I'm Roger Stone, and joining me now from our new New York bureau is Tyler Nixon, California attorney, longtime conservative and libertarian activist, who is going to join me in our discussion with Jordan Sather of Destroy the Illusion, a terrific YouTube channel where he is informing the American people about the excesses of the deep state online. Tyler, welcome to the War Room.
Always good to be with you, Roger. Jordan Sather came to my attention. He operates the YouTube channel Destroying the Illusion, and does regular videos in which he sort of brings together a lot of the different elements of deep state activities, the globalist sort of Soros-type underworld that infests, I think, our daily discourse. And I wanted to get him on because he regularly delves into what has become known under President Trump as fake news, but was once and still is called disinformation or misinformation that's put out there. And I wanted to welcome to the show. Jordan, welcome.
Thank you guys for having me on.
We can't hear Jordan.
Can't hear me there?
Well, Jordan, we had kind of talked a little bit about things like 4chan and 8chan and QAnon, which I think a lot of the InfoWarriors, myself included, didn't know much about, I think, and we'd like to hear more about that. What is 4chan? What is QAnon? And what kind of information is being put out there that is revealing what really goes on behind the scenes?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hear you now. Yep.
Take it away, Jordan.
Cool. So first, let's discuss basically what 4chan is. For those who don't know what it is, it's an anonymous posting board where anybody can basically go onto 4chan and post images and text. And under the /poll or the political boards on 4chan, it's been said that a lot of insiders or different people would actually go on there and post sensitive information that they wanted to leak for whatever means, whether it's to help the public or get some information out there. And recently what's been going on, especially since the very end of October and even up till recent days, is that a poster by the moniker of Q, we don't know if it's a person, we don't know if it's a group, they've been going on to 4chan and leaking what's been called breadcrumbs. So it's basically a bunch of information that is it's suggestive in nature. It's nothing direct, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of symbols even. There's a lot of inferences that are made to basically make people research. They'll type in these things. They'll try to find connections between these, quote, breadcrumbs that the Q or QAnon or Q clearance patriot is leaving onto 4chan. And ever since this, we've been seeing a huge, I mean, I'm not necessarily an expert on 4chan. You read the posts and run with them. But there's been a huge infestation of trolls onto 4chan, so much so that some of these posts have migrated onto a sister site that's not affiliated with 4chan. It's called 8chan. But anyway, these posts are still being made on this 8chan by, this Q person. And when you look at these pieces that are laid, these questions that are asked, we don't know. None of it is confirmed. It's all alleged and supposed, but it's very interesting how this all intertwines. And a lot of these questions almost verify things that have been called fake news or have been called, quote, conspiracy theory for years. And the way these posts point to this big picture of a behind the scenes civil war almost between different intel agencies and between an alliance per se fighting the deep state. It's quite amazing when you really look at it.
One of the more recent revelations I understand that actually panned out was a reference to what happened in Saudi Arabia. Can you give us a little bit into, a little insight into that? Because I think that's one of the more validating, I guess, posts that came out ahead of events unfolding.
Exactly. And this is one of the few pieces that allow us to see that this might be a very real person or group leaking information is what happened in Saudi Arabia. So at the beginning of November, there were suggestions by this Q to look at what he termed SA, and that leads to Saudi Arabia. A few days later, we saw the huge shakeup occur in Saudi Arabia, the sweep of hundreds of officials arrested. We saw multiple princes over there all arrested for corruption, and Prince Al-Walid, who has a large stake in Twitter, and who has direct connections to the Clinton Foundation and many other people who have been, it's said, a part of this deep state. So, that's one of the crumbs that connects, that allows us to see that, wow, this might be very real and discussing real events occurring behind the scenes that we're just trying to gather.
Jordan, I wrote in my book, The Making of the President 2016, that I believe that it was only the rise of a vibrant and robust alternative media that allowed for the election of Donald Trump. Now, I myself have seen graphically how bots, or perhaps humans, on the internet seek to counter this vibrant alternative media with disinformation, shadow banning, and other computer techniques to limit our reach and to cut us off from those who follow us. I myself, of course, have been banned for life on Twitter. We'll see about that. But tell us, is it possible that the deep state has as many as 10,000 human beings sitting there all day? I thought they were all in the basement at Media Matters for America, but perhaps not. Exactly what's going on?
So yeah, being on YouTube, I have direct experience and direct knowledge of these types of shadow banning and other manipulation techniques that the deep state tries to do with the internet. And a lot of that is demonetization. A lot of times I'll upload a video and instantly it'll be demonetized, or later on as the view count rises, it'll demonetize. I've even seen view count anomalies. It'll get stuck, or a lot of people message me. They don't get notifications and a lot of things like that. But first and foremost, I think when you look at the artificial intelligence aspect of it, they log the words that we even say, and certain analytics procedures will then shadow ban based on that. But we're seeing such a rise in alternative media in YouTube, in INFOWARS, and people trying to get the truth out there, that they're having to resort. I mean, recently Google posted that they need to hire 10,000 people to literally roll around YouTube and try to mark what they call offensive content. But then, of course, who's determining the offensive content? What is exactly the offensive content? Is it offensive to the American people, or is it offensive to the deep state and the plans they don't want to be outed? These are all crucial questions to ask when you're looking at these things.
Look, fake news is in the eye of the beholder. What we publish at INFOWARS.com is truth. The deep state sees it as fake news when we know CNN is the epitome of fake news. CBS, NBC, ABC, they continue to promulgate falsehoods. At this point, I think the deep state would like to stick the toothpaste back in the tube. That's why they are fighting so ferociously to maintain the current net neutrality rules, which are incredibly misnamed. Yes, there's net neutrality for carriers, but the big boys, Amazon, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they are completely unregulated. They can malign you, they can censor you, they can silence you, and you have, they think, no redress. This is Roger Stone with Tyler Nixon and Jordan Sather, and you're on The War Room. Before we finish here, go to the INFOWARS.com store, folks, for your Christmas shopping so we can continue to expand our program and bring you terrific interviews like this one. We will be right back. Welcome back to The War Room with my guests Tyler Nixon and Jordan Sather. We are exploring the misdeeds of the deep state on the internet and their efforts to counter what we here at InfoWars do every single day, bring you the real news as opposed to the fake news. You can find Jordan Sather at Destroying the Illusion, on YouTube. Fascinating work that he's doing, exposing the various efforts of the deep state. Tyler?
Well, one of the issues that I think, Jordan, you definitely covered quite a bit and brought a lot of threads together was the Las Vegas shooting, which remains mysterious. I think it's very bizarre. It was in the news, it dominated the news, and then suddenly nothing. It's as though it just didn't happen. It just didn't exist. It's been completely dropped from the public consciousness. We've heard nothing more. As with the Kennedy assassination, we have supposedly a lone nut shooter, yet they can't release anything. They want to withhold information. For what purpose, I ask? If it's just a lone nut who's doing a lone nut deed, who cares that we see the video of him bringing the rifles into the room and so forth? So there's a lot of murk around that. And InfoWars has assiduously covered it. Owen Schroyer and Roger have done a great job. Particularly Owen has done an excellent job covering it. But I understand you've delved into it as well and saw a lot of anomalies and strangeness going on. Did you find anything in particular in your looks into these anonymous postings and post rooms, chat rooms, whatever they are, that kind of made you really, really question what happened in Las Vegas besides the obvious?
Absolutely. And I questioned it instantly because, like you said, there's just an amazing amount of anomalies that were there that are unanswered. And once these postings came out, which was approximately a month later, with the Vegas shooting being at the beginning of October and these dropping at the end and into November, there were a lot of dots that connected. And a lot of those dots coincidentally connect right to Saudi Arabia. For instance, I believe it was Prince Al-Walid, the prince that got arrested. He was a majority stakeholder of many of the top floors of the Mandalay Bay. And there's also underground video that was released of at adjacent casinos, certain people being escorted around, and some digging was done, and it could have very well been people associated with Saudi Arabia, instances occurring at adjacent hotels, which were of course unreported, more anomalies. So there's a lot of coincidences and that's exactly right there, between the QAnon posts and the Vegas shooting.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. One of the things I think that we wanted to touch on, which touches on this because of the deep state and because of the operations that go on, these are all funded by somebody, and they're not in obvious budgets. They're not disclosed to the American public, obviously. There's a lot of black budgets. And you brought to my attention that the Department of Defense is apparently attempting or going to attempt a real audit. As we recall, back in 2001, I believe the morning of or the day before 9/11, it was announced that there was upwards of $1 trillion that couldn't be accounted for. Why don't you give us a little bit on that and what's going on with the delving into that, as well as the larger black budget issue?
Absolutely. And this is a topic that I do very deep research in. And the day before 9/11, on September 10th, it was Donald Rumsfeld who admitted on the congressional floor, he was talking to Dr. Cynthia McKinney, a great woman. I've interviewed her on my channel. He admitted to her that there are $2.3 trillion on that day unaccounted for from the Pentagon. And, well, what happened the next day? The 9/11, of course, occurred. And what happened to the Pentagon? Well, it was the accounting offices, it was said, that blew up. You know, whether it was a plane or something else that actually flew into those offices. The next day, everybody forgot about that. You know, 2.3 trillion, that's a lot of money. And fast forward about 14 years later, in 2015, much more recently, the Department of Defense, via the Inspector General, put out a report saying that that number is now upwards of maybe even 6 to 8 trillion. Okay, that was in 2015. And if you look at the work of one Catherine Austin Fitts, you know, she said that that number is potentially up to 15 to 20 plus trillion. And it's fascinating now that we finally have the first audit of the Department of Defense. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. But the question still remains, where's the rest of the money gone? Whether it's, you know, 6 trillion, could be many more, that's a lot of money. And it's had to have gone somewhere. Well, when you begin researching just that, the black budgets, the money that doesn't need to be disclosed in the military and quasi-military corporate structures to Congress, there's a lot of money there that go into these unacknowledged special access projects. And it's a question what these unacknowledged projects deal with, whether it deals with highly advanced technology, you know, zero-point energy technology. I wonder where Tesla's papers went when they were confiscated from his apartment when he died in 1946 or 47. And there's many more scientists that have research that has went missing. And not only is the research went missing, but we have a lot of this money that's gone missing. So one can then gather that it's very likely a lot of this money has been funneled into projects that deal with highly advanced technologies that could literally liberate, you know, humanity of its energy needs, these zero-point energy technologies, but also electrogravitic technologies where you can take a craft or and actually make it counter gravity through the use of electricity. And it's fascinating stuff because it absolutely redesigns your ideas of what science is. Of course, the deep state we were just talking about earlier, they control us through the media currently, but the same people that control the media are the same people that control the education institutions. So it's almost a full redesign, a perspective or a belief system redesign we all need. And doing research into this, we could say secret space program or these special access projects, I'm doing some work via secretspaceprogram.com on all of this. So it's, it's a huge topic that needs to be disclosed, and it ties into every single other thing we're seeing come out, and especially that of the deep state.
You know, it reminds me of something once said by the late Senator Everett Dirksen, who said, "A million here, a million there. Pretty soon it adds up to real money." Anyone who has read my book, The Clintons' War on Women, available at the INFOWARS.com store, knows that Hillary Clinton seems to have simply misplaced $600 million in the State Department budget during her tenure. It boggles the mind, these enormous wastes of money that belongs to the U.S. taxpayers. With a little less than 3 minutes to go, I'm going to ask Tyler Nixon to wrap this up, and then we want to remind you yet again that we are listener and viewer sponsored here on InfoWars, and we need your support to continue our crusading effort to bring you the truth about the proposed and planned deep state takedown of Donald Trump. So do yourself a favor, do us a favor, go to the INFOWARS.com store now, 50% off the entire line of Super Blue products, including their terrific Super Blue toothpaste, a whitening toothpaste very favored in the Stone household. These are really exceptional products with literally thousands of honest testimonials from satisfied info warriors. But we cannot expand, we cannot continue to bring you the breaking truth without your support. So go now and load up on products like the Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste. If you're a bircher, you don't have to worry about this toothpaste. There's no fluoride, but it does help us with our expansion here at InfoWars. Tyler?
Well, in the last 90 seconds or so we have, Jordan, you're a millennial generation, and I'm always curious because Roger and I were talking about this earlier, that people don't read books as much as they used to, and it's all internet-based. Everything is, reading and researching on the internet. What do you see the ultimate impact of your generation being in terms of the long term with regard to politics and with regard to culture? It's a big question, I know, but do your best.
And you have exactly 1 minute.
Here's the question. I got 54 seconds. So it's amazing that my generation is now becoming the largest, but it's unfortunate that they're also the most indoctrinated. We deal with the most media, the most Hollywood, the most time in the education systems that all brainwash us. So in my opinion, we need to get back to books. A lot of the knowledge I'm reading from books made in the 1920s and 10s, but at the same time, we do have to mix that in with the internet, because the internet being such an amazing collective consciousness expanding tool, we can get a crazy amount of information on there, from InfoWars, from Destroying the Illusion, from all kinds of different sources, which is no wonder that Google and YouTube are trying to censor it all. But really, it takes effort. A lot of people say knowledge is power. I don't believe that. I think action is power. Knowledge is only a potential, so we actually have to take